Imagine a community losing access to electricity because fuel deliveries are disrupted. A major power plant fails, or an aging electrical grid cannot recover quickly after a severe storm. When these situations occur, the question for lawmakers, energy planners, businesses, and the public is not simply where the electricity comes from, but whether the electricity can be produced reliably, affordably, and securely when it's needed most. Solar energy offers an important part of the answer because electricity can be generated in many locations, including homes, business, public facilities, and large utility scale projects. Solar energy is sometimes presented as an environmental preference rather than a practical energy resource, yet the evidence shows that its role is much broader. Solar technology is becoming increasingly competitive. Solar deployment is expanding rapidly, and distributed solar generation can contribute to energy security while reducing dependence on fossil fuel electricity. Solar energy is not a perfect replacement for every energy source because storage, transmission, land use, and panel material management remain important challenges. However, these limitations can be addressed through technological development, responsible planning, and sound energy policy. Herein, I will argue that solar energy should be treated as a practical alternative energy source because its costs are becoming competitive, its deployment is expanding rapidly, and its ability to generate electricity without fuel combustion can strengthen energy security while reducing environmental impacts. Solar energy is becoming economically competitive. Firstly, solar energy deserves greater consideration due to its changing economic position. Energy policy must consider affordability because electricity cost affects households, businesses, industries, and governments, while energy investments can influence economic conditions for decades. A source of electricity cannot become a major part of the energy system simply because it has environmental advantages. Instead, it must also provide economic value. According to the International Energy Agency in its 2025 report, Renewables 2024 Analysis and Forecast to 2030, solar technology and wind are expected to account for approximately 95% of renewable capacity additions through 2030. And competitive generation costs are one important reason for their continued expansion. This projection is significant because it indicates that solar is not remaining a small alternative technology, but it is becoming a major component of new electricity capacity. Solar systems can also be developed at different scales to give communities and energy users flexibility. A homeowner can install panels on a rooftop, a business can generate electricity on its property, and a utility can develop a large solar facility that supplies electricity to a wider grid. This range of applications also allows solar power to respond to different electricity needs rather than requiring a single model for every community. The United States Department of Energy, through its 2024 analysis of solar technology costs, examined factors such as manufacturing, installation, energy costs, and supply chains. This research provides a technical and economic basis for evaluating solar energy, and it shows why decisions about solar should be based on measurable cost, technological performance, and changing market conditions rather than assumptions about renewable energy. When solar energy becomes more competitive while remaining flexible in its deployment, the economic argument becomes stronger, yet its values extends beyond the price of electricity because energy security must be also considered. Solar energy can strengthen energy security. Secondly, energy security depends partly on having a diverse electricity system because dependence on a limited number of fuels, facilities, and transmission pathways can increase vulnerability when disruptions occur. Solar energy can contribute to diversification because electricity can be produced in many different locations, and those systems can operate at residential, commercial, institutional, and utility scales. Consider the difference between relying heavily on a small number of centralized facilities and having electricity generation resource distributed across many locations. A failure at one centralized facility can affect a large number of customers, whereas a distributed network of solar installation can reduce the dependence on a single generation site. Solar power not eliminate grid vulnerabilities, but it can become one part of the more diversified system. As per the International Energy Resource Renewable 2024 report, solar technology is expected to remain a leading source of renewable energy expansions through 2030. This continued growth matters for energy security because greater solar deployment can diversify the source used to produce electricity, while reducing some dependence on fuels that must be continually extracted, transported, and delivered to power plants. Energy storage can make solar energy more useful because batteries and other storage technology can retain electricity generated during periods of sunlight and make that electricity available when solar production declines. Stronger transmissions can also help move electricity between locations when supply and demand do not occur at the same time. Solar, therefore, should be viewed as a standalone replacement for every energy resource, but it should be considered as one component of diversified electricity systems that include storage, transmission, and dependably generation resource. It can strengthen energy security through diversification, but it's important to become even clearer when the environmental effects of electricity produced are considered. Solar energy can reduce environmental impacts. Thirdly, solar energy can reduce some of the environmental impacts associated with fossil fuel electricity generations. Solar systems generate electricity from sunlight without requiring the combustion of coal, oil, or natural gas during operation, and this difference can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and certain forms of air pollution associated with fossil fuel combustion. According to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, the IPCC, assessment editor Otmar Edelholmer and other contributing experts, renewable energy sources and climate change mitigation. Renewable energy technologies, including solar energy, have important potential in energy production and climate change mitigations. The assessment examines solar technologies, their energy potential, environmental effects, and their role with broader energy system. Cleaner electricity can have benefits beyond climate policy because communities located near heavily populated energy infrastructure can experience environmental and public health burdens associated with fossil fuel. Reducing dependence on fossil fuels can therefore support cleaner electricity production while contributing to broader climate objectives. At the same time, a credible argument for solar energy must recognize that the solar power also creates challenges. Solar facilities can require substantial land. Photovoltaic systems depend on sunlight. Large projects can require additional transmission infrastructure and manufacturing solar panels requiring material and industrial process. Panels also eventually require more responsible recycling, reuse, or disposal. These concerns do not make solar energy impractical. Instead, they show why solar development should include appropriate site selection, energy storage, grid improvement, material recovery, and responsible long-term planning. Why solar energy deserves policy support? In all, when economic competitiveness, energy security, and environmental effects are considered together, solar energy becomes more than an environmental preference and it becomes a practical policy option. The preceding evidence indicates that solar photo technology is positioned for substantial growth, while the Department of Energy provides economic and technical support for understanding solar costs and development. The IPCC, on its part, provides scientific foundation for understanding the environmental and climate implications of renewable energy technologies. These sources point towards a reasonable conclusion. An example, solar energy should be expanded as part of the diverse electricity system, while policymakers should also address the challenges that accompany its growth. Supporting solar does not require abandoning every other energy source, and it does not require claiming that solar can provide every electricity service under every circumstance. Instead, it requires recognizing where solar can provide economic security and environmental value, and then creating policy that allow those benefits to be used effectively. Lawmakers can support reasonable Lawmakers can support responsible solar deployment through policies that encourage investment while maintaining appropriate environmental and land use standards. Any planners can strengthen this electricity system through investments in storage, transmission, and grid resilience, while researchers can continue improving solar technology, manufacturing process, and methods of recovering valuable materials from retired panels. Communities and consumers can also consider solar where local conditions make it economically and technically appropriate. My conclusion is that solar energy deserves serious consideration as part of a secure, sustainable, and diversified electrical system. Its costs are becoming increasingly competitive, and its deployment is expanding rapidly, and its ability to generate electricity without fuel combustion can reduce dependence on fossil fuels for generations and some of its associated environmental impacts. While it does have its limitations include intermittency, strong storage requirements, land considerations, transmission needs, and the responsible management of panel materials, these challenges can be addressed through technology development, careful planning, and effective policy. Solar energy is not the only answer to the world's energy challenges, but it's the practical tool for building a more diverse, secure, affordable, and cleaner electricity system.